Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time for the playoffs. We are moving on to Week 15, then we've got 16 and 17 for most of us. I will be here for Week 18, but if you are tuning in right now, that means you have probably made your playoffs, so congratulations. I'm proud of you, and I hope that I was able to help you through that, and I hope that I can continue to help you. And at this point in time, it's a 3-week season at most. Some of you might have buys this week, so we are looking ahead to week 17 and 18 as well throughout this video as I go through the positions, keeping all of that in mind. This is the time of the year it's okay to consolidate your roster. If you're holding on to Tyjae Spears and you don't have Derrick Henry, but you do have Joe Mixon, don't be afraid. Maybe Chase Brown might be the better hold. In case Joe Mixon goes down, then you for sure have a guy that you can bring on in to be your next starter. Those are the types of things to start thinking about, as well as you can hold on to two defenses at this point of the season. If you feel confident about your starting roster, you have a guy at the bottom of it that you can drop, go right ahead. Take a little bit of risk. It's okay to get rid of a little bit of your depth just to look ahead at this point in time. I said deft, kind of. I didn't mean to, def. So, there's that. We're all through with the bye weeks. I also want to let you know, if you are going to be tuning out at any point here soon, I do look at the draft, the NFL draft. I will get heavily into that. There will be videos on that. So if that is something you're not interested to, just go ahead, turn off the notifications. No need to unsubscribe. I mean, you could. I'd prefer you didn't, but turn the notifications off so that doesn't bother you. And then, whenever you decide that you are ready to start getting back into fantasy football mode, I will probably already be there. So just tune on in at that point come next June, July, whenever it is that you decide to tune on in again. Additionally, I would like to do a listeners league of some sort for next season. So if you have any interest in that, you can email me at thefantasyfootballforge@gmail.com. I think there should be, my email address should be in the description of the videos. Hopefully, if not, I remember to put it in there. But yeah, just, the name of the channel at Gmail. And with that said, let's look at the injuries who might be coming back yet in the playoffs and who might not be getting back, and all the new injuries from week 14. Wasn't a high volume week necessarily at the injury spot, but there are several big names, unfortunately. So when we look back here, Christian Kirk, he went on IR. If you have a week 18 championship, he could come back for that, but otherwise he is definitely gone for you. Michael Thomas, Luke Musgrave could be back next week. That is the soonest that they can come back, so we will see for them. Jonathan Taylor could be out for the rest of the playoffs, could be coming back next week. Not expected that he will be coming back this week. Kenny Pickett, the same thing, not expected to be coming back this week. Could be at any point from that point forward, though. Rashid Shaheed, Ramondre Stevenson, Christian Watson, Brian Robinson, Michael Wilson, all guys who are within the time frame here for their injuries that they could be returning this week, and it also could take longer for any number of them. So we shall see on them. Demario Douglas has been out for some time with his concussion, has been a could return for a couple of weeks now at least, so he once again could return. Same with Darren Waller. He could return from his hamstring injury. I might have been a week early on him last week, but I do think that there was some optimism for the potential return for Darren Waller this upcoming week. Then Aaron Jones, Josh Palmer. It seems to me that they are likely to be returning this week, so that's why I have likely to return over there. New injuries that we're looking at here. Justin Herbert fractured a finger in his throwing hand. He has a Thursday night game. They've already essentially said that it's doubtful that he will be coming back this week. It depends on factors, of course, here. He could be back in the next game after this week. He might not return for the rest of the season. That might be the best thing to do for the Chargers. Then Jake Browning with that thumb injury. Really don't know what to think about that at this point in time. Don't know if he'll be returning or not. We shall see. I would think that it's semi-likely, especially since we haven't heard anything at this point in time. But who knows, by the time this video comes out, might have heard something. Speaking of that, Monday night games have not been played yet. So if there are any big developments from the Monday night games, some shakeups to this, I will put that most likely down in the comments. I might record something at the end of this, depending on how big the news is. and where I'm at, after the game as far as tiredness. But for the most part, probably would be down in the comments, especially also if I missed anybody that I realized later on in the day it should have been in here. So there you go. And then, CJ Stroud concussion, expectation would be that he'll be out for a week. That's the norm. Jerome Ford, wrist x-rays done today, came back negative. Don't really know what to expect from that, but there is potential that he will be missing some time. So we do keep that in mind with our running back waiver options this week. Then Josh Jacobs, Alexander Madison, 2 more running backs that the expectation, it appears, will be that they're not coming back this week, that they'll be missing at least 1 week with their injuries. I would say more likely for Alexander Madison to miss some time than Josh Jacobs. But from what I can tell, in general, for a lot of knee injuries, we're looking at least 1 week missed. But he did play throughout the game with the knee injury until he couldn't any longer towards the end of it. It had happened, the injury originally occurred early on in the game. So we shall see there. Isaiah Pacheco's shoulder injury. Don't really know much more about what exactly that injury is. But most likely, we're looking at he could return this week to being gone throughout the fantasy playoffs is a possibility. So we shall see with that. Really don't know at this point in time. Justin Jefferson is considered day-to-day, and it sounded like a report just came out a short bit before reporting that they are hopeful and they think that there's a decent chance that he will be returning this week, assuming that this week was against Cincinnati, because it said against Cincinnati. Then Nico Collins with that calf injury could be out for the entirety of the playoffs. Might not miss any time, but of course, with CJ Stroud most likely missing time, we're not going to be too high on Nico Collins this week. Unfortunately, for really all of those Houston offensive players might not be what you were hoping for come playoff time here if you have been utilizing them. And Tutu Atwell with the concussion here. Potentially, he was... I don't know that he's in concussion protocol. So we shall see. That's why if he is, then 1 week. If not, who knows? And over the last 2 weeks, Matt Stafford has finally been producing in fantasy, and he comes up with a really good matchup. So when I have guys highlighted in green or red, obviously green means that it's a good matchup. Pretty much, not even always all the top 8, but at maximum, looked at the top 8 or top 25 best matchups for green, worst matchups for red, based on average fantasy points scored against teams from this position. So in this case, Washington is in the bottom 25% or top 25% as far as a quarterback matchup, however you want to phrase that. And then New Orleans, New York Giants in a couple of weeks. So not a very scary schedule going forward, and a really good one this week. So definitely top-end streamer and somebody who you could use if you've lost one of your quarterbacks throughout the playoffs. I think he is by far and away the option that you want to get here out of these options. And Baker Mayfield, Gardner Minshew aren't terrible options. Don't like the matchup this week. Baker does have a good matchup in a couple of weeks. Also, speaking of strength of schedule, this is the strength of schedule for the rest of the season or the playoffs, and pretty much everybody has a 3 out of 5, so not really going to look at that too much, which helps with these highlights too, to paint a better picture and help you figure out if you want 2 quarterbacks for the playoffs, which ones you want to get compared, to work with whatever quarterback that you currently have, etc. Start playing those matchups. Then Will Levis, I think it's tough to trust him this week, but he's got Houston. He's going to have Houston again after that. Not a tough matchup necessarily against Seattle in 2 weeks. So if he could have another good game here against Houston this week, you might be able to have some faith with him down the road. And Zach Wilson in a couple of weeks, if probably don't want to trust him against Miami even. But if he does good there, has another good week, maybe we can trust him against Washington in a pinch there. So there you go. Deeper leagues, probably kind of guys here for Zach Wilson, Will Levis. But depends your league with all the quarterback injuries that have been going around. And there we are. Those are the quarterbacks. Let's move on to the running backs. And once again, we are going to have several options here. It was tough to order these options. You could throw a lot of them around in different orders, and it would be tough to argue against whatever order somebody wants to put them in. But this is the order that I went in. Hopefully, once again, these highlights will help you. You see this Las Vegas highlight a little less deep, a little less darker of a green than the Arizona and Indianapolis highlights here, obviously meaning that these are much superior good matchups compared to this good matchup in Las Vegas for CEH in a couple of weeks. And so you will see that with a couple of other positions where I'll have some tiered colored rankings just to give you a little bit better of an idea of how good or bad of a matchup that they are. I think I always just use one red color. Maybe not for wide receivers. We'll see. Ty Chandler here, though, is at the top of my list. I believe that Madison is the most likely guy to miss some time that I feel confident about getting more than 1 week from Ty Chandler especially out of these two, Ty Chandler and Zamir White. Detroit in a couple of weeks, not the best matchup, a couple of good matchups in between. Then Zamir White does have a good matchup in a few weeks, but we don't know right now if he's going to be the starter even at that point in time. And I don't necessarily love this Los Angeles Chargers Kansas City matchup for him either, but very, very close to Ty Chandler. Just think that the likelihood from what it seems right now for Ty Chandler to be useful for you is a little bit higher for more than 1 week. And D'Onta Foreman appears to be the primary running back in Chicago, so that's great. Maybe he could have been at the top of this list, especially when you look at this. But Cleveland been much more susceptible against the run for some time now than Arizona. Really, really good matchup. Then a really tough matchup for the championship, though. So if you are going to be relying on D'Onta Foreman, you're in running back hell. Try to find somebody else that you're going to end up being able to rely upon for your championship. I don't really foresee him having a good game against Atlanta. His running style is not going to, I don't think, upset Atlanta and come through for you there very easily. Then Keaton Mitchell, just a flex-worthy option if you're shooting for a ceiling. Never going to feel too confident about it, but also not a terrible play there. CEH, so those are my top 4 guys here. I think there's a bit of a cutoff here because CEH has just never really been that great, regardless of opportunities, and this Kansas City offense isn't really one where they seemingly, especially with CEH in there, are going to be running too much. So that's the concern. There's also concerns that Isaiah Pacheco could be returning as soon as this week, so there's no guarantee that you're going to be getting anything from him anyways. But if so, he is the starter there. In the meantime, and I do have Jerick McKinnon down here in the free agents. Look, I pretty much got their workloads correct in my projections, so CH still is going to project better than Jerick McKinnon, even though he did do better last week. His workload was very similar to what has been on the season, just pumped up a little bit, especially in that carry department, which is what got him the touchdown. It probably would have been an Isaiah Pacheco touchdown if Pacheco had been healthy. But instead, Jerick McKinnon was in there in that situation, and I do expect he would be the guy in there when they're 7 yards out from the end zone. CH, maybe once they get within 3 yards at best. And that's what makes CH just not very great, but in a pinch, you're in a situation like I am with your running backs, he might be your best option. Antonio Gibson, if he had some better matchups, it might be a better option, but don't really love this Los Angeles Rams matchup for him. Also, not a guarantee that he is going to be the starter. Brian Robinson could be returning this week. And then same with Kareem Hunt here. Jerome Ford could play this week, and it is a wrist injury. He did play through it for the entirety of the game, so I don't know what the likelihood is of Kareem Hunt not just being a high-end free agent type of guy instead. You're still going to want to stash guys like Tyjae Spears, Rico Dowdle, Elijah Mitchell, Chase Brown, Kenneth Gainwell, Roschon. I looks like would be playing ahead of Khalil Herbert in the event that D'Onta Foreman were to get injured. Dearness Johnson been coming on. Jeff Wilson in case of an injury or two there in Miami is the last guy on that list. A couple of free agents here. Chris Rodriguez Jr. might be the guy to get the carries, the main workload ahead of Antonio Gibson. That's always possible. So if you're in a real pinch at the end of the week, you could always play him, and I do think that he would probably get more touches than Jerick McKinnon. I think is very likely. So that's why I have him ahead of McKinnon. And Tyler Algier, you could always go throw out there, same with some J.B. Ryan, and hope for the best. Let's move on to our wide receivers. And it really looks a lot like it did last week with a couple of changes. Noah Brown did fall down in this list simply because I mean, if you're looking forward, he's not such a bad option. Maybe for 2 weeks from now, he could be the number one wide receiver with C.J. Stroud back. That's going to be a nice situation. So, if you already have him, might be worth holding on to if you don't need something this week. Don't go ahead and drop him in that situation. But this week alone, I'm not trusting Noah Brown, even if, and he most likely will be the number one wide receiver, but without C.J. Stroud. As far as the top guys here, we'll see what happens tonight. Maybe these two would flip based on what happens tonight. But Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs are my top guys on the waiver wires still this week. Really good matchup against Tampa Bay coming up next week. And a not scary but not good matchup against Carolina after that. The Minnesota, I think, for the most part, a pretty decent matchup for wide receivers. And Zay Jones also making this list. Got a decent amount of targets last weekend, so that was promising. A good matchup in a couple of weeks against Tampa Bay that I think we could expect things for him for. And, his quarterback looked fine. The ankle didn't seem to hamper him at all, but this is capped by a couple of rough matchups on either side for Zay that you're probably not going to feel too great about having to throw him out there for. Curtis Samuel, always a guy that you could play. Juju Smith-Schuster. If Demario Douglas does not come back, you see these guys are all in italicized. I like them more than the rest of this list. But if Demario Douglas doesn't come back, Juju, another nice floor guy that you could play. And then, like I said, Noah Brown, looking forward, might be a good play. Don't like him this week. And, we're hoping that Rashid Shaheed, Michael Wilson could get healthy. They could be some solid options if they do as well that you could pick up late. Now let's move on to the tight ends. And Isaiah Likely, I think, was still less than 50% owned on ESPN. That is my marker. I guess I didn't double check that for him. But assuming he's not, either way, he made my list. So if Isaiah Likely's out there, solid pickup. Rough matchup in a couple of weeks here, but otherwise Miami, Jacksonville, you're not going to be too afraid to play him in those ones, and he's just always going to be an upside option for you at least. And then when we look at streaming, we are looking ahead here a little ways, and these are all going to be just the good matchups that they have coming up. Top 3 to 4, I think, tight end matchups, the ones that were clearly positive matchups above the rest of the NFL. And so Logan Thomas with the Rams, third best tight end matchup on the season so far. I like that. I like Logan Thomas. So always a good streaming option there. Chig, we'll see what he does tonight or what he did last night for you. But Houston twice, it's a good tight end matchup. So hopefully he'll give us some faith to play him going forward in tonight's game. Then Hunter Henry does see Denver in a couple of weeks. That's been a good tight end matchup, of course. Same with Gerald Everett in 3 weeks. So once again, if you're looking ahead, if your tight end has a bad matchup in some of those weeks, those are the guys who you might want to pick up. So there you go. Now let's look at those DSTs that have been peeking from the bottom of the screen there. So over here are the average fantasy points scored by these defenses in like a standard DST type of scoring format for each of these teams, so you can see that there. Main thing here, so Indianapolis is just going to be especially if you're only holding on to one DST going forward, they're going to be your best, most solid option here, even though they don't have any of those top matchups. You can see I do have 3 colors here for these. New York Giants are by far and away the best matchup for defenses. I do think that that's been maybe a little less true with Tommy DeVito, but I don't know about how much less true. And then Washington, Carolina there. Still very, very good matchups in New England. Also, a quite good matchup, not quite on the same level as those Carolina, Washington, based on the points allowed to them. But you can mix and match these DSTs with whoever you have currently on your roster, etc., based on the matchups coming up. But the Atlanta Falcons going to see a pretty solid schedule here. And they have Carolina next week. That's why I put them second on this list, is just because they have a really good matchup. So they're kind of the number one streaming option for next week. Probably Indianapolis with Pittsburgh will be ranked higher than them. So maybe number 2 option this coming week. But if we're looking forward, overall for the playoffs here, weeks 15, 16, and 17, I think that the Denver Broncos are going to be your second best option as a whole here, going up against Detroit, New England, Los Angeles Chargers, probably Easton Stick there for the Chargers. So that would be, helpful, make that matchup better than it appears already, which is not terrible at this point in time. And so, and they've been, doing much better as of late. So they're as good of any option as a DST that might be available out there for you. Philadelphia Eagles haven't been great on the season, but it's a solid matchup here. And week 16, you're going to get, I think, a matchup that they should be able to take advantage of against the New York Giants. Probably a really good matchup for them. So there's somebody who you might want to hold on to for a week and plan on playing on week 16. Once again, depending on exactly who you are planning on starting currently on week 16 for your DSTs. Or if you have a bye week, you can just grab them right now. Jacksonville Jaguars, rough matchup this week. That pushes them down this list a little bit, but they are the third best DST on this list so far in the season. Then they see Tampa Bay and Carolina in week 16 and 17. So that's solid. And the Rams really have like the best lineup here. You're going to see Washington, then New Orleans. Not really a great matchup, but the New York Giants after that. The only issue is, on the season, they don't score a whole lot of points as a DST. They don't take advantage of situations too well. They've just been a scrappy defense that limits teams. But as far as fantasy goes, they don't really produce a lot for you. But there are some fantastic opportunities coming up. But just don't overrate that too much for them, because you need a defense that's going to take advantage of these situations as well. And they just haven't done it on the season. So there it is. There's the waiver wire. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comments, especially after last night. Anything that might have gone on there. Should I grab this person over this person? Whatever. I'm here for you. I'll get to those questions hopefully in time before you are able to see it and get your waiver wire things, in. That's it. Peace out. Love you guys. Good luck this week. And obviously my rankings videos were coming out throughout the week. Also, I should have my quarterbacks and my tight ends rankings up on the website by the end of today. So you can also check those out if you want to, up on the website, www.theff4age.com, before making any decisions as to or choosing your waiver priority based on my rankings for this upcoming week. Peace out.